Hello and welcome to an episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Happy Trump week, Don. It's been a big one. Certainly a lot has changed since the last show, but in many things are still the same as well. So I don't know where you want to start. Probably with BTC. One
hmm
point of commentary that's been pretty busy on the social side is the idea of how the market is responding to the news. So,
Yeah.
just to paint some extremes, one camp is like the market is pretty sluggish in the face of all these headlines. That's bearish. Markets top out on good news and bottom on bad news. Another camp is saying you're just like losing perspective. These regulatory things take a while to hold up, and this is just like the ETF where you have like short term weakness, but overall doesn't really do anything and it's pretty strong. And obviously the third camp just making fun of people who are trying to read tea leaves by looking at price and news at the same time. Where do you fall in all this? Because you've been fucking tweeting so much, it's been very difficult to keep up with. So I don't have like a well. I mean, this is like influencer tactic 101, right? You just like
Yes.
cover them
Oh,
in content and then pick out the bits that end up being correct. But in this case, it was genuinely quite hard to follow. I'm wondering where you sit with the market's reaction, all the headlines, etc. Interestingly enough, the one piece of context I'll add is in last week's show, basically said, hey, reclaimed whatever 99-ish K and it's going for the breakout. So just watch that to see a sense of how the market reacts around the inauguration, any news. And that's essentially the two areas to keep an eye on: the all-time high breakout level itself, and then the former daily range high, I think it was, at around 98.9K, 99K, whatever. And we're just kind of trapped in between those levels for the time being. So taking all of that into account, the levels we spoke about, the all-time high spike, the news, sentiment, etc. Where are we at? What's your pulse on things at the moment?
I mean, the news thing just depends on how you kind of look at the news itself and how you think, like whether you think that's bullish or bearish. I think so basically Trump came around and he was like he wasn't talking about a Bitcoin reserve, which a lot of people priced in. We talked about this and we were like, it's very unlikely, if I remember correctly, right? Like that's always been my stance. Like the whole like, okay, the US is just gonna full portfolio into Bitcoin was always just very, very unlikely. Um, and Trump coming out and saying maybe they want to have a crypto reserve, or like I don't know exactly anymore, like off the top of my head how he called it, but that's basically it. So he was basically making a point not just for Bitcoin but for crypto as a whole, which I think is bearish news because a lot of people were pricing in the strategic Bitcoin reserve, even though that was stupid in my opinion. Um, and then Trump comes out and basically makes it about all of crypto and basically says that it's just gonna be, at least for now, the ones that they already got, right? As in, there's not gonna be buying unless Congress kind of pushes that through. So that to me, for Bitcoin at least, was bearish news. Because I think a lot of people positioned wrongfully for the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and then you get something like that, which is much more crypto and less Bitcoin. So I would say the reaction to that news has actually been quite bullish. And then there's a lot of people that are like, hey, we have clarity, we have all of this is all bullish news. Why are we not going up? That's bearish, right? And I think they're kind of confusing like short term with long term stuff, because I think this is like, if anything, this was bearish short term news and bullish longer term news, not the other way around. But I think a lot of people just look at this very differently depending on how they feel like the market was positioned and all that kind of shit. But for me, that was, for Bitcoin at least, not the best news. Very predictable, but not what I thought the market expected. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think it depends entirely on what corner of Twitter you live in, right? Um, it seems like there was an expectation, at least from some parts, that he would literally show up on day one and say, executive order, we're TWAPing Bitcoin with Michael Saylor every single
Yeah.
day, and the other one would just be like the doomer version of, oh, he just used crypto to like finesse votes and he doesn't actually care or give a shit. Um, I don't think Trump, like himself, on a personal level, has like a massive interest in this type of stuff. I think he knows strategically it's kind of important for votes, and then it makes him popular-ish. and he is making appointments, but like, you know, the World Liberty Fi stuff is being run by his sons effectively, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's actually classic Trumpian fashion where there's just a big fucking swamp of people around him, people close to him, insiders, maybe quote unquote deep state operatives or whatever else. It's just like, you know, his circle essentially, and then they just look at ways to leverage his presidency for their own self-enrichment, you know? Like, I actually don't think it's ever useful to think of, oh, Trump thinks X, Trump thinks Y. I'm sure he cares about some specific issues on a personal level to actually do the diligence and have oversight and understand how the bureaucracy works and get into the weeds of things. But I think with most things, it kind of, like in many presidencies, just in his case, it tends to be quite swampy. It just gets outsourced to some apparatchik, you know, and it just, whoever's in that position just tends to push their own self-interest above anything else. I just don't think it's entirely coherent to talk about like a Trump strategy, you know? If you're going to make that argument, you either have to look at the people around him who are driving this kind of stuff, like who's he having meeting with, who's he having meetings with, who are the lobbyists, what are the World Liberty Fi, Trump-facing entities doing? Like, I think that makes sense. Or you have to look at the legislative level, because we elected a shit ton of crypto-friendly, we bought off essentially a bunch of crypto-friendly senators, right, and helped them win their races with money. And so I think if you're looking for like actual regulatory strategy and where the impetus is going to come from, it'll just come from the swamp men and the regulators more so than what Trump himself is saying. Then you say about the Memecoin as well that like, oh, I don't know like that much about it or whatever. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I mean the Memecoin is insane, like absolutely insane. The fact we didn't like, it feels like we didn't talk in 3 weeks just because
I know, yeah, crypto just changed completely.
Yeah, so much shit happened. We got a Trump coin, then that was widely successful, and immediately we got a Melania coin. Like, fucking, that's insane.
I mean, one of the worst decisions. It feels like one of the worst decisions in modern financial history.
100%.
Not to be too hyperbolic about
100%.
it, but if you look at like how much it went up, how quickly it got to, you know, the tens of billions in market cap, the liquidity that was there, the attention, the mind share, it was literally cannibalizing the entirety of the market. And you spawned it out of nowhere, and then you just fumble that on a fucking Melania coin. Like, just take it. It's one of the most impressive acts of self-sabotage I think I've ever seen in financial markets. And whoever was like advising this or gave the green light should absolutely be fired and feel really awful for the rest of their lives for thinking this was a good idea or something worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, one argument that I've heard that doesn't seem too far-fetched for me with these meme coins is that basically, and this is something that Trump does a lot, right? So basically, he lends his name to companies, to products, to whatever for a fee, and that he basically did the same here. He's just like, hey, you guys can make a meme coin with my name, but you're gonna have to pay me. And it was so successful. But he didn't like that he only makes like whatever, like 50% of the cut or whatever, like 50% of the 80% that they're getting or whatever that number may be. So he was like, okay, just fucking send another one, but this time not with them, but with like someone else. I could see that be the case. Basically, just do it double. First one was kind of like so successful. It was like, fuck it. These people are getting paid way too much. I want to kind of profit, because the Melania terms were even worse than the Trump coin terms were, like completely predatory. Yeah. So I don't know, but just generally, like, it's such a fumble. It's such a, like, I could have seen, and I knew that this was going to happen. Like, I've seen how he's launched his NFTs. He has like 5 now.
I mean, you're still holding like 3 of them, right?
No, actually, I think I don't hold any anymore, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, but you got like diluted 10 times over and over.
Yeah, I mean, he literally launched 5 different ones.
Based.
Like,
okay. I mean, he's actually very good at crypto, all things considered, right? That's
I mean,
like, you don't make money by
Rugger.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't like trade this stuff or build something and stay with it. You're supposed to just do serial launches at least until one of them bangs, and then you just keep extracting. That's the only correct way to do things around here.
The problem is that with the NFT, he had one that banged, the first one. Like, the entire NFT market went in the bear market, and that thing went up like infinite, and would have continued to go up if he didn't launch the second one, and the third one, and then the fourth one, and then the fifth one. And the same thing is true here for the meme coin, right? Like, he just self-sabotaged so hard on both of these things. The reason why I'm saying launching the new NFTs was stupid was because he had a fee of 10% on that first collection, and volume was like insane. So he was making, every single time someone was trading, he was making 10%. And like I said, volume was insane. And basically the moment he launched the second one, like everything just died. And it's the same with Trump Coin now. And we can have a look at the chart. It's been only like up only from 0 to 70, like 78. And then ever since Melania launched her coin, or like Trump launched Melania's coin, whatever, potatoes.
Sure.
It's been down only, and actually just horrendous price action. Now, I'm not saying this is gonna go to 0 anytime soon. I think if anything, it's probably gonna like just stabilize and bleed over a while. But I would not want to hold anywhere close to the unlocks, because I mean, just by the way that they launched Melania coin, I'm like 90% certain that you're gonna get dumped on your head. Like, this is not a passion project. He made that very obvious with his comments, right? Like when he was asked about about Trump coin, he was like, I don't know much about it. Like he literally said, I don't know much about it, but I launched it or something. Like, not literally said that, but that's kind of what he said. I don't want to quote him wrongly, but that's basically what he said. Which means like this is not like something where he's like, oh, I need to have the meme coin at the top 10 market cap or whatever. He doesn't give a fuck. So like I'd be careful on that front, but I would also be careful with being too bearish on it, because he's still the president, and you never know. Like if someone from his inner circle holds a shitload of this and it's like, hey Trump, can you do me a favor? I could actually just see him like just go on stage, say something about it, and then it's gonna blow you the fuck out if you're shorting it. But I generally think that's gonna, in USD terms, it's gonna go down, like bleed down over like the long run. It's just the market cap is probably gonna like stay the same or go up even, just because of the unlocks. Like 80% is Trump, 20% is people that are holding it right now. So there's going to be a lot more tokens coming once the unlocks are out. It's quite like one of the worst meme coin launches in terms of how fucked up it is for the holders that we've ever seen, I think, at least on this stage, like at this stage of like just being so big.
Well, thing is, it could have been, I think, in the hypothetical universe where Melania doesn't exist, this is heralded as like one of the best launches of all time, and subsequent price action, everything else, you know?
Oh yeah, I mean the launch was great. Like I'm not
yeah.
talking the launch. I'm talking about like how fucked up it is in the sense of like how little the people own and how much Trump owns, and how like, I mean, he owns 80%. Like that's insane. Like that's just like completely, like that's Ripple levels insane. You know what I mean? Like we were shit talking Ripple for so long because they owned like 90% of the coin, and they gave out free XRP at the beginning, right? Like you were getting like 100,000 free XRP for commenting on a post of like Garlic House, right? So I mean, that's not something you're getting on this coin, and this is why XRP is so hated for the people that don't know, like because they own so much of it. And Trump coin is pretty much exactly the same thing, just a meme coin where it's very untypical to do this. This is why I'm saying like one of the worst launches, but obviously like how it went, like, and if Melania coin didn't launch, would have been one of the best ones by far. Like that was insane. I slept through all of it, at least on the first pump, and then on the second, I was like, I just could see him just launch another one like any second. And I mean, could have still bought 30 and sold 70, but he did actually launch the second one. And I think like if it goes back up, there's going to be a third one, and then a fourth one, and then a fifth one.
Oh my god, yeah. I don't know, man. I just still can't get over like how wildly successful it was, and you literally created in pretty decent market conditions a black hole of liquidity, and then some idiot fucking green lights this Melania coin, and the whole thing, you just lose all momentum, all credibility, like everything. I don't know, like you literally had like a immaculate/miracle conception, and then you just you bottle it. It's unbelievable.
I mean, it literally would have overtaken Doge. Like, I would have been 100%. I mean, it did in full diluted value. It actually overtook Doge. But like, I literally think if they didn't fumble this, this would have been the biggest meme coin. But like in the market, which is Doge. But they did fumble it. Is what it is.
Yeah, it's pretty sad, if anything. But yeah, no, I agree. It's not. I don't think it's like a lazy, just short this thing because the hype is gone type of trade. The tail risk there is always that, as you mentioned, someone just has his ear and gets some renewed interest, or says, how much money you've made off this, or I think it's, again, you use the swamp strategy. You start leveraging the people around him. Like, you go to his sons, for example, who are more crypto native and are doing the World Liberty Fi thing, or at least lending their names to it, and you say, hey, like, it's time, basically, for round 2 on Trump. We just got to get him to like retweet this or post this or mention it here or whatever else, and then you get your face ripped off by a 2x, right? Especially given it's down from the highs. It's down like 60% almost, 57%. Even if it does like a shitty bounce, that can be massive in percentage terms. Simply because,
especially if it goes lower now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it goes to $20. Like, it can, that can bounce to 40, 45 just by one Trump mention. So.
And it is just like just to zoom out and turn off the trader brain to some extent. This is the coin of the sitting president of the United States, launched on Solana. Like, that is hilarious and absurd. And I think, can you imagine if during the FTX implosion you told someone this? You were like, BTC is 105k, Sol is at 265 or whatever. ETH still at 4k, obviously, or like 3.3k, and Trump just launched a shitter. Are we close to the bottom or close to the top? You'd be terrified, right? You'd be like, what the fuck? Like, Bitcoin's over 100k, I'd sell everything, basically, right? Like, I don't think this is early by any means. We can have the cyclical discussion or whatever else, but I really think it's a nice mental test to be like, if you were on the other side of the cycle, what would you think of the current state of affairs, right? Like, I think that's a nice little framing thing. So, if you were looking at current market conditions at the FTX bottom, how would you feel about them? Or if you were at whatever all-time high, or at the FTX, but so you kind of reverse it, right? If you're low, you think about how would you feel at the last top, and if you're high, how would you feel at the last bottom, etc. It can give you some sense of perspective, and I think it's very hard to make the argument that in cycle terms we're early or whatever else. That doesn't mean it has to go down 80% and it's like a 4-year bear market again, right? It could lead to all sorts of wacky stuff. But I think just that on that point alone, in terms of on the adoption side, like, you've got Trump launching shitters and the swamp people around him launching DeFi protocols. You're not like early to crypto, unless I think you take like a 5-10 year view where you're like, everything needs to be tokenized and Bitcoin needs to flip gold. Like, I think that type of early you could argue for, but most people aren't like anywhere near that time horizon. It's kind of month to month, year to year at most. And I think in those terms, it's very hard to make the argument for being early. And people always, also, there's like a massive anchoring bias. I don't know if you've noticed this, or maybe I'm completely wrong, so feel free to correct me. When the market goes up a lot, and to justify it going up a lot more, it's like we always change the metrics we look at. So we look at like post-inauguration price action, or like 4-year cycle price action, or post-halving price action. But if you actually look to kind of consider how high we are from the actual fucking bottom, it's been a gargantuan fucking bull market already, right? Like, from fucking 16k to like 110k, that's fucking absurd.
I mean, it's getting close to 10x. Like, that's how
10x on BTC of all things, like the so-called Memecoin, right? And think about all the tokens that we conjured from thin air this cycle as well, and that type of stuff. Anyway, not to get too distracted, TLDR on Trump. I think it's very interesting. I think it deserves a space on any watch list. The wind sails, whatever, fucking got nuked. That's the perfect English idiom for you. What is it? The wind got taken out of its sails, right?
Yes.
Something like that. But I don't think that means it's just going to bleed and die to zero. There are too many swamp creatures around Trump, and he's got too much of an ego to let this thing go completely to zero, although he's done similar with his NFTs. And I think the sense of greed that those people got when it was at its highest is something that's very hard to put down properly. So there could be a news, there could be a retweet, there could be some sort of, just nonsensical involvement, and then it would like double or triple.
You can just like very lightly suggest that it's gonna be in the crypto reserve, right?
Yeah,
Like just be
why
like,
not?
oh yeah, I have a meme coin, maybe we add that, and then it literally just 3x's
Yes.
because
It's
everyone
so
in
fucking
crypto would
news
buy it.
sensitive, and Trump is just a volatility vector when it comes to
Yeah.
news. So I wouldn't lazy short this thing. I think if it like proper fucking nukes, might be worth a buy. Just so you have some, you know, it wouldn't be like a leverage whatever position, but just so you hold some spots, so like in case the news thing comes out, you get to ride a bit of a decent momentum wave. Like I feel like if you're in crypto and the president's a fucking coin, and you at all times, even if it's down like 60, 70, 80%, have zero exposure, that feels almost kind of lazy, you know. So that's kind of the reasoning on Trump. Although Melania, I don't think I would touch. I think it's like an by
No,
all
that's
accounts
awful.
inferior version by every conceivable metric of Trump. So
No,
people already start looking for like, oh, if Trump pumps, this is going to pump. It's like, have you learned nothing from 2021, 2, 3, 4, 5? Like you generally don't chase the beta stuff. And so if you want the swamp exposure, I think you do it via Trump and not via fucking derivatives or anything else.
Yeah, I agree. One thing I want to say with the cycle being early, all that shit.
Yes, please.
If you remember back, like 2017, we had like C-tier celebrities, right? Like that's kind of how it went. Like before 2017, no one was interested. Then 2017, 2018, we got C-tier celebrities talking about crypto. Like the trashy shits, like way past their prime, were like famous in their youth, and now they're talking about crypto and promoting some ICO or whatever. That was 2017, and that was the top, right? And then we had 2021, and that was like literally some of the biggest athletes on the planet like promoting crypto, and just generally like I would argue like A-tier celebs being in the space, and that was the top for 2021. And I mean, you can make a good argument that I mean, now we've topped all of that this cycle, 2025, with Trump having a meme coin, right? Like just from a like just very neutral perspective, we've kind of topped the charts with this one. You cannot go bigger than the president of the United States. So like next cycle, there's not gonna be like something like this again. Like you literally cannot top this, other than like I mean, I don't even know like a nation doing it. But then again, this is as close as it gets to that, especially in the current landscape, I don't think you can necessarily go bigger than Trump. Like he has all eyes on him, right? Like the haters are hating globally, which is really funny, technically speaking. Like it doesn't really matter for us Euro fags, whether like Trump is president or not, but all of us have an opinion, right? Like I think this is gonna be the most controversial presidency in history. And so basically him having a meme coin, I don't think it can ever be topped again. Like I think that's basically the tippy top of craziness that we have in the market. And you can make an argument that like this is just a continuation of the trend, which is every single cycle we get bigger and bigger people onboarded, and it's always very close to the top, right? So that's one way to look at it. Now I'm starting to FUD myself out of my bag. So
This is what we do every
stop.
show. It's actually fantastic, and the market just goes up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still holding. But just generally, the argument we are early, I think, like you said, is completely and utterly moronic. How can you be early when the president of the United States has a meme coin?
Yeah.
Like it's just
not a serious
early.
position. I'm sorry.
No. Like we're very late.
Yes.
We're very, very late.
But then the classic cope to that is, oh, well, all the gains are made at the end anyway. And people just use that to justify having 100 or 150% of their exposure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas it should be the opposite, really. If you've intellectually come to the position that, oh, we're no longer early and the most wealth is made, the thing is, when people say the most wealth is made in the final section, what that really means is the most volatility is in the final section. And those two things are really fucking different. Because that same volatility that quote unquote makes all the wealth also takes all the wealth. Like they're both both sides of the same coin, essentially. Or both faces,
the argument is like, most money is made at the end. It's kind of bullshit because most money is lost at the end.
Yes.
Like straight up, because the money is made, like people already making money until you get to the end part, and then they make
Yes.
a little bit more maybe, but they've already made a shitload, and then everyone is fucked. So if anything, the opposite is true.
Yeah,
Now, I still like to use the argument because
yeah, it's a
it pumps
fantastic
my
argument.
back,
Yeah.
but technically speaking, the opposite is true. Most money is lost at the end. It's just how it is.
Yeah, it's just a super reliable go-to. But just in general, when if you feel like you've come to that position where it's like, okay, we're late, and I think the market is approaching kind of, time-wise, a period of peak volatility, that's when you size down and scale down. Like, if you're being reasonable and generally speaking. The reason people don't is because, but usually by the time the market gets there, they either just had a shit time trading and didn't make enough money on the way up, or they due to some combination of factors, they feel like this is their last chance to like make it ever. And obviously, as you know, Don, having been there since 2017, cyclically since 2017 anyway, like every cycle is the last cycle, right? So there's like additional pressure from the fact that, okay, listen, the volatility is about to peak, all the money is made and like in small print and lost in the final weeks. Oh, and by the way, this is the last cycle ever, so you better start fucking hyper gambling. And people fall into that pressure tactic essentially, and usually end up to compensate for their past sins, and because the cycle is over forever and there's never going to be another cycle ever again, they tune up the leverage and just get washed out worse than they would if they just treated things normally. Whereas in reality, if you're coming to that position, 9 times out of 10 you're scaling down / scaling out, or at least like becoming more liquid, to take advantage of the wacky blowouts that happen. But yeah, like the sitting US president has a fucking meme coin. Like, what do you want me to say? Should we talk about BTC, by the way?
Yeah, in a sec. I want to say one more thing. I generally think that, I mean, just because a lot of people are saying like, oh, it's the last cycle. I think with all the crime that we're doing, and I think this very, like, a lot of people have been upset at me for saying like titling this the crime cycle, but also a lot of people like are using the term now. I see it everywhere, which is really funny. But just generally, like, I think with being in a crime cycle, and like I said, I think it's fair to say, I think there's going to be a crash at the end of it, like we had in prior cycles, same kind of magnitude. And I think that's not going to be the end of crypto, right? So I'm pretty damn certain there's another cycle after this one. After that one, I don't necessarily want to make any predictions, because I think like if Bitcoin, like let's say Bitcoin rallies to 150k here and then tops out because whatever, the crime gets too rampant and everything just fucking nukes. I think if we have another cycle after, like I said, and kind of make new highs, you are already at a market capitalization that is so high that I think the market would just slow down and just kind of get boring, like a normal TradFi market of sorts. And I think at that point, you can make the argument for like a super cycle where you kind of trade a little bit like gold, very slow, very whatever, but just walks up, or like stocks, where they don't really ever dip, but like sometimes they do, but just generally like it's up to the right, but very slow in comparison to what crypto is. So I think the whole like, oh, this is your last chance to make it is a little bit overblown. I don't think that's necessarily true. But that's obviously just my opinion.
We just love to fucking take the most dramatic interpretation of everything, right? It's like at the bottom, it's always there. It's funny. The conclusion is always there will be no more cycle. It doesn't matter if it's gone really high or really low. It's like, well, that was the last time this thing is ever going to happen. And it always works like momentum-wise. You come to the same conclusions, right? It's like it goes down, and it's like, well, crypto's reputation is ruined now. We'll never go back up ever again. And then crypto goes up, but it's like, oh, we've got a new class of buyers now via Sailor ETF, and we're flipping gold, so crypto's never going to go down. And then it's just wrong every single time. If anything, you should I think your base case should be that these things, these constants generally stay constant, and even if they change, they kind of change gradually and one at a time. And it's the more kind of localized assumptions that get invalidated, like ETH outperformance, alt season, etc. But like the big picture stuff, like, for example, that money rotates between altcoins that we love talking about on this show, and like BTC generally goes up and to the right, like that type of stuff seems much more stable, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, I've got the BTC chart on. It's got the same 98k, 108k lines, and then this 4 hour is actually one of the ugliest things I've ever fucking seen in my life. I don't know if you spent any time looking at it, but that is some sort of I don't know what kind of triple, quadruple-headed monster piece of shit is this.
It's people trying to trade this.
It's news trading
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
faded, right?
It's basically a bunch of people trying to predict what Trump is gonna do and being wrong,
Right.
and then it's also a bunch of people predicting how news are gonna like impact the market and getting it hilariously wrong. Like all of that combined, basically, like a bunch of people are very, and I think that's something that you can feel in the market. Like everyone is a little bit antsy because I think at the end of the day, like people realize that this is not like early cycle things that we're going through right now. So a lot of people are looking for the top, and then like this excuse of news trading, whatever, makes them like think, oh, I'm gonna nail the top here, short, and then they get blown the fuck out, and then people are like, oh yeah, this is just the beginning. The moment Trump makes a comment, and then they long and they get blown the fuck out. It's kind of the price action you get when people don't really like they make their whole idea and kind of thesis for the market hinge on what Trump's gonna do, which I get. But if you're news trading it like this, it's just gonna get you fucked. Because I kind of subscribe to the idea too, right? If Trump is abandoning crypto, like with that in the water, I think 100K, like we pushed quite high, we priced in a lot of things. If Trump doesn't do anything, there's a good chance that it just bleeds out. And that if Trump fully embraces and kind of fully scam cycles this, that we can go higher. Like I kind of subscribe to that too, but you have to not look at every single interview or whatever he does and then try to trade it based off of like a single comment. I would give it more time. Like if you think Trump can be trusted on his crypto comments or his advisors are going to push him into whatever he promised before, then I think you can make a decent bullish bet on crypto. And if you don't think so, you can make a bearish bet. But if you're like sitting there watching every interview, watching every 1 hour candle, I think you're getting fucked in this environment. And that's why the chart looks.
That's why it looks like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a follow up, just in terms of headlines aside, pure price action stuff. What do you think is the reasonable update, if any, to what we discussed last week, which is watch the breakout, watch 98.9K. Everything else is kind of on the noisier side. So in terms of what's developed since then, well, we kind of spiked the all-time high a little bit and have been creeping higher since then. I think it doesn't look bad. Like obviously it would have been nice if it blasted through, but there's just a lot of horny headline froth that's been getting washed out repeatedly, which makes sense. But overall, nothing too shitty there, right? Like I think if this turns into a breakdown, like sub 99K, I would actually start growing much more concerned, because at that point the argument is we couldn't even break the all-time high with all this soft strategic reserve headline, whatever news. The market was just jamming into it, hoping for a breakout, but it's like TA failed breakout into quote unquote news fundamentals that seem super priced in / heavy. Let's trim some fat. That would kind of be the argument. Sub 99K ish. We had a bunch of headlines, had a bunch of positioning. If that was enough to break out, then that tells you something about the market, sort of thing. Like I think that to me is at least consistent. But everything else, looking at this intraday, it's not particularly interesting beyond that. What do you think? Has your view changed? Has your mind changed? Any new levels emerge?
No, I pretty much exactly agree with you. Like below like 99, 98 starts getting scary just because.
Why are we here?
Yeah. And I mean, because at the end of the day, if you completely take everything out of the equation, other than the fact that like Trump has actually not, like he's done a bunch of crypto things, right? Like, because that was the biggest fear, that Trump just basically uses the crypto base to get votes and then just completely ignores it. He could have easily done that. It kind of seemed even more likely when he launched his Memecoin, because I mean it's the most extractive thing that you can do, and I think even the biggest Trump fans should fucking hate the fact that he did it. Like I think it's not really presidential stuff, right? Like it's not something that you would think the highest office in the world does, like use the presidency to kind of profit and then do it twice with Melania. Like that's insane. But he kind of freed Ross, did like these comments yesterday with the crypto reserves that that kind of make it obvious that that's going to be a reoccurring theme, somewhat at least in the presidency. And if you then go below 90, 99, 98K, then you're just like, okay, because the fact that he didn't abandon crypto is bullish enough that we shouldn't really go there. So that'd be quite bad, I think. And then you can get a proper washout. I think at that point you have like too many people on the wrong side of the trade. But also if we go above 106K and start breaking out above the highest close, we've tested that a lot of times now. I think could just run. Needs a little bit of help from the traditional markets, but they've been decent at least. And then I think could be run, like could just run at least a little bit, like 120, 130 maybe. And I think that would be enough to actually get a lot of eyes from retail back in. Like basically like the headlines write themselves, like that crypto does well under the new presidency. And like Trump has said that they're going to make the US the #1 place for both AI and crypto. So you can easily kind of like start getting a lot of eyes on crypto if you do that. So needs to go a little bit higher for it to break out. And then you can, I think, make a good argument for just that the media is going to jump on it.
And more importantly, Michael Saylor is going to jump back on it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a few news on Michael Saylor's front. I don't know if you've heard the fact that they were like a little bit worried that they might have to pay taxes on the stuff they bought.
Oh yeah, I didn't do enough diligence on that to see how legit it was.
It seems kind of bullshit because I mean, as far as I'm aware, you don't necessarily need to pay taxes on unrealized gains, at least not yet. I know that there was a discussion in the US, but under Trump, that seems very unlikely.
Yeah, I think it was a Warren proposal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think any Warren proposals are going through anytime soon.
Yeah, so I don't know why this is like an article in the headlines today, but just generally, it just very much depends on like the appetite. If he's gonna, if people are still hungry for more or not. I mean, if people gave him more money to buy more, I would actually start getting really worried about MicroStrategy. Like his average is so high already. Like if he starts buying at 120 and gets enough money, because I could easily see it go to 150 and then back to 80, right? But if he manages to get his average to like 130 and then we're trading at 80 at some point, like that'd be actually just scary. So like maybe he shouldn't get that, but then we probably also don't go so high, right? Like if Saylor cannot buy, probably don't go so high. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting time anyway. Like the Trump presidency, if anything, is going to make the market quite volatile. That's for certain. It's the one thing that I'm certain in that we're going to get a lot of volatility.
I mean, it's always funny, always interesting rather, to think about the sort of profiles of different buyers in the market. One thing that gets thousands of likes every time on Twitter, it makes me want to fucking pull my eyes out, is people say BlackRock is buying, as if like BlackRock is this like singular entity, like the BlackRock the institution itself is choosing to like put Bitcoin on its own balance sheet or whatever. Whereas it's just fucking punters in their Roth IRAs and Vanguard accounts or whatever else, just not Vanguard, I don't think they offer it, but it's just like punter, like BlackRock clients who are just normal fucking people buying BTC. Now sure, there's some institutional participation there and whatever else, but it's not like BlackRock is this singular entity that's choosing to do the buying and Larry Fink is telling them to buy Bitcoin and then going on TV and shilling it. That's like not what's going on. These are their clients buying. Sure, some are institutional, a lot of retail, a lot of punters, a lot of just like whatever, trading momentum or trading crypto because it's trendy. It's not like a thing that like the BlackRock for its own account or its own like prop desk is buying Bitcoin. That's not what's going on. But people just post these fucking heat maps and bubble maps and wallet fucking on-chain sleuthing, whatever, and coming to making absurdly wrong arguments. They're just like so foundationally wrong, you don't even know how to start refuting it. It's like if a bunch of people on Coinbase start buying a certain coin and then people interpret that as saying Coinbase is buying. Like you would never make that argument because they're two completely different things. Like people with a Coinbase account are not Coinbase the company. And it's the same thing here. Like people with a BlackRock account are not BlackRock the company. But it seems, I'm sure our audience will at least be insulted, being like, look at these fucking idiots just babying us talking about simple shit that we all know. But like, dude, almost every single week I see this on Twitter get thousands of likes, and almost no one in the comments at this point bothers refuting it. I guess because either they don't know, or because the narrative is just like so attractive that no one gives a shit or bothers to correct it. But it's like foundationally wrong, so I'm gonna bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with like everyone's like Larry Fink is shilling it, right? And it's like, yeah, it's a product of his that like he offers this shit. Like he makes money,
Yes.
like, or BlackRock makes money if you trade it with them.
Yes.
So obviously he wants as much volatility and as much like volume to go into this. Now, whether he actually personally likes it or not is a different question. I think he actually does. So he is kind of shilling it actually, but people kind of confuse. Like it's like CZ, like CZ or like any other exchange owner being like this is great. You should be looking at this. And it's like obviously they want you to look at it. CZ was chilling like anything in crypto from the top at 70K all the way down to 16K. Because he was like, oh yeah, crypto's so bullish, everything's gonna go up, basically, like crypto's the best industry. Obviously he says that, right? And he doesn't really like, it's not like he's like knows any more where the price is gonna go than anyone else. At least he's not gonna like give you good financial advice. So I find that kind of funny, because we can see this in any industry, right? The guy that's gonna sell you the thing that he sells is obviously gonna be very in favor of it. So shouldn't really listen to them too much. But yeah.
But it's much more sexy to misinterpret it. Okay, BlackRock is buying, Coinbase is buying, like everyone's fucking buying. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to add on BTC more so than last week's stuff. 99 all-time high break, and stop chasing headlines, because I think even in this period of consolidation, legit a lot of money's been lost by trying to force this thing.
Yeah.
What about ETH BTC? Because there's been kind of a vibe shift on ETH BTC. Sentiment wise, like I've unironically seen some calls for all-time high on this thing, by the way.
Yeah. That's bad.
So you're not doing your job properly, because other people are beating the ball drum much better than you are. I don't know why exactly would make that argument at this exact juncture. Like it doesn't jump out at me. I think given how
it's not TA, they're making it because of Vitalik and like that whole drama stuff.
I mean, the one I saw was TA, but sure, I think it's both.
Yeah, but I think basically the reason why so many people look at it is because you have a bunch of prominent ETH figures kind of capitulating.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you have a lot of traders just kind of be like, oh, this is capitulation, now it's going to go up. Which then in turns gets these TA types to kind of, because you can make something up with TA, right? Like I can give you a bull case with TA, even if it's as bearish as it ever has been, if I want to, right? So I think like if someone really feels like, oh yeah, all of this capitulation that's going on in the ETH ecosystem and with the people around it, that has to be the bottom, then I mean I can draw lines that make it look good. It's just that's not necessarily accurate lines. So I think that's where it's coming from.
Yeah. I think also the couple of narratives that I've seen, or at least one of them, is the whole World Liberty Fi thing. They buy ETH and they like ETH. So, people just making admittedly somewhat tenuous connections between people around the incoming administration and ETH, and then the tokenization stuff from Larry Fink they've latched onto as well. But he's been saying that pre-Bitcoin ETF, I'm pretty sure. So there's nothing new under the sun there. And honestly, I don't know, like with a dominant trend as intense as the one on ETH BTC, you want to see real evidence of capitulation, and that means this shit has to stop trending, either by going sideways for fucking ages until you lose your mind, or ripping the band-aid off and making you want to jump off a cliff, or alternatively just start printing fucking 20, 30, 40% monster green candles. Like those are I think the reasonable avenues on how to resolve a trend like this, one that's as aggressive but kind of unforgiving and grindy at the same time. But like having a couple of ETH people be like, yo, fuck ETH, and Vitalik post about like the Ethereum Foundation, like looking at the chart at least, it doesn't look like mega capitulation. It doesn't look any different from the last 2 years.
It really doesn't. Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe there's a bit of a mismatch there between price and sentiment. Those tend to converge one way or another, and I don't know, I feel like if you're going to be it's such the evidentiary threshold to be bullish ETH is like pretty high in general. If you look at its last, its performance over the last couple of years, certainly on the BTC front. I mean, the USD front's slightly different, but I mean, we can talk about it. And I just think people have like particularly low standards for what qualifies as trend reversal in ETH BTC. And looking at this fucking thing, that's been a very expensive decision to make.
Oh yeah.
To kind of give ETH the benefit of the doubt has been one of the worst relative term portfolio construction measures that one could have taken. So you'll forgive me for saying what I've been saying for the last however long, same with you, with a couple of bull intervals along the way of like, I want to see a bit more, Yeah. Has your mind been changed on ETH BTC as well?
I mean, ETH BTC just looks like shit. Anyone that like makes the argument that the chart looks good on ETH BTC, I think has smoked too much bull copium. I like ETH USD, and that's why I'm holding it, right? But the ETH BTC is just, it's dog shit.
I'm guessing ETH USD is the same thing as before, right? 2.9k, and then we've tested 4k a bunch. Please go up. Is that
I mean, that was perfect. Like, it perfectly retested 2.9k, the levels we talked about like forever on the show.
Yeah.
Bunch of chats. Like, I had a bunch of people be like, "Hey, thank you so much," and I'm like, "I didn't even buy it, dude," but good for you.
Thanks for making my levels look good, dear listener.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's pretty much exactly the same on ETH USD. That's a good looking chart. ETH BTC, that's just not a good looking chart. But the sentiment is quite extreme. I think it's been as negative as Bitcoin was at like around 16k. Like, this is really, really strong sentiment. So I get why people are jumping on it. I think personally, like, what could happen is if Bitcoin breaks out, and it's a big if, but if it does, ETH might not partake in the rally, and that would put in like a big down candle on ETH BTC, and I think that could actually be the bottom of ETH BTC, and I think that would actually lead to the last few people that are like, that you can make capitulate. I think that would make them capitulate, and then goes up. That's why I'm like, there's room for a big candle to the downside on ETH BTC, is what I'm saying. Doesn't have to happen. I generally like ETH USD, so that's why I think if you're gonna get that down candle, it's probably while Bitcoin just goes up. So basically, ETH USD doesn't move, and that's the worst thing possible, right? Like, imagine you sit through this, like Bitcoin is at 100k. You're sitting in your ETH and it's already outperformed by a lot of other things. And then Bitcoin goes to 150k and you're still sitting there at the same price level. At that point, I could see a lot of people kind of just be like, fuck this, which would lead to a nice kind of capitulation into like at least a mean reversion, if not like just a straight up pump. Like, that's something that I could see. I could also just see it bottom based on the sentiment that we have right now, but I think the chart doesn't really reflect too much bullishness on the ETH BTC side. So I want to be a little bit careful on that front. I literally, I'm just like, ETH USD, that's a great looking chart. It's one of the biggest consolidations we've had in crypto in a long time.
Yeah.
And it's ETH. It's not some garbage where I'm worried about like it just disappearing. It's ETH. It's still like, it's my second favorite crypto after Bitcoin. So I'm like, okay, the good looking ETH USD chart is more than enough.
Thing is, no one has the patience for this fucking consolidation, Don. And can you blame them realistically? Like, you've been sat in ETH the whole time, underperforming relative to BTC. Trump launches, everyone becomes a zillionaire, and you're just fucking holding this ETH infinite weak range the entire time, hoping that it breaks 4k for like the 8th time. Like, I would understand if someone literally said, I would rather lose money breakout trading 4k, but at least I'll know the resolution of my trade quicker, rather than buying the consolidation for like an indefinite period of time while the market just is doing everything other than sending ETH. Do you think that's an insane position?
No, I get it. I totally get it. If I was holding ETH from 2021, like, I'd jump out the window. Like, that's fucking
sure.
Like, that's awful. And I mean, we talked about this, right? Like, we talked about the ETH midwit trade, and that played out.
I mean, that was your very clear thesis, and I think you got so much roses like, on that one.
Yeah, people are calling me like I've seen a lot of people be like, "Hey, Don's been bullish the entire way down." I'm just
fucking insane.
Like, people are just literally just making shit up at this point. But Yeah, I think just generally, like if you bought 2021, to me, buying 2021 is like having bought Bitcoin in 2017, end of
Right.
2017, start of 2018. You literally bought the peak or top, right? So if you're complaining about ETH underperformance, I mean, dude, you literally bought the top. Like, I'm sorry, take some kind of like credit for how fucked, like how much you fucked that trade up, basically. And I think it's not necessarily. I mean, there's obviously a lot of ETH fault in this, but I think it's much less than people give it credit for. It's just basically ETH has a different cycle to the Bitcoin cycle, which makes sense, right? You don't just want to have every altcoin trade like Bitcoin does, in the sense that like Bitcoin goes up, your altcoin goes up 2x, and then Bitcoin goes down, your altcoin goes down 2x, and it's useless. You can just trade leverage, right? Like this market is much more interesting when you have like Bitcoin goes up in a cycle and then you have like a delayed cycle for something else, right? And I think that's kind of what ETH's going through, where it's just like, or it's like very similar to what XRP did in 2021, right? Which is nothing. XRP was like piece of shit. No one made any money, and now you see in the next cycle, it's just massively outperformed like a lot of other things. And I think that's basically the position that ETH's in right now, which doesn't really help ETH holders too much. It's more of like a long-term bet, I think, than pretty much anything else in the market. Like Bitcoin, the best long-term bet, I think ETH the second best long-term bet, but we're gonna have to be able to sit through pain. And it's much better now than it was in 2021. I can promise you that. Like back then, I called it a midwit trap and said it's shit. Now I'm saying like, I mean, it's definitely not midwit anymore. I think if anything, you can make an argument for it being 70 IQ or like 130 IQ, but it's definitely not in the middle
Okay.
anymore.
Nice little upgrade there.
Yeah.
I don't think anything's changed on the TA side because the
No.
market hasn't changed. 2.9K, 4K, and that's it. Fuck off for the rest,
Yeah.
really. It might be the case that I think we touched on this dynamic in another show. Like, ETH does look awful, but a 4K breakout, it could be sort of USD driven
Yeah.
strength into
It is, I
ETH.
think.
Like, that could, like, if that doesn't save ETH, then just like delete it from your watch list. Nothing will. Like, if the break of a multi-year, I mean, look, essentially 4K has been the top for the last like 4 years, right? We had like a slight detour above it in the crime cycle, but it's just that's been the hard cap for ETH. It's 21 million for BTC and 4K for ETH. Apparently, those are the hard caps in crypto. But like
Mm-hmm.
that's if that's not enough to catalyze an ETH BTC period of outperformance, then probably fucking nothing is at that point.
Yeah.
And I think you can try breakout trading 4K, and if you're wrong, you should feel less bad about it than you ordinarily would.
Mm-hmm. I think
I
it's one
think
of the
that's
best
okay.
breakout trades that you
Yeah,
can.
like if you're gonna take a breakout trade, it might as well be something like that, right? Like a
Yeah.
level's been tested like 1, 2, arguably 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and you're just breakout trading the 7th or 8th test or whatever, depending on how you count, on ETH into the all-time high. Like, even if you get instantly wrecked on that and you feel like an idiot, I don't think you should feel too bad about it. That you can
Yeah.
sort of rationally justify that breakout trade, or at least the EV. There's something there compared to like what most other periods in its history. So that's interesting. But I mean, looking at the intraday timeframes, Don, it's like it's just kind of the same shit, right?
Yeah.
Sideways with spikes and not much going on. What about Sol? Have you looked at that much? That obviously was a
Um,
beneficiary of Trump launching on Solana.
yeah.
It ripped pretty
There's,
hard on that day, and it's doing the same all-time high hover. Um, like it was, a couple months ago, around 260 ish. What does that mean?
um, I mean, it's generally just looks quite good now.
Bro, who keeps fucking selling the all time high? What's going on here?
I mean, there's a lot of people that have a lot of cheap soul.
That's true. That's
So
very true.
I'm not surprised. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think Sol has like multiple advantages that other coins don't have. One is like the American meme, right? They've branded themselves, even though everyone is in Dubai, right? They managed to brand themselves as a US coin. Um, so like Trump is kind of into that, and then you have like just generally like with all of these news, it's always like Sol is always included, right? You had the we haven't even talked about that yet, where we're probably gonna get like CME, XRP, and Sol futures. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw the Dogecoin ETF. And
it came yesterday.
The news website.
Yeah, that was the Doge came a little bit later. So we had like Sol and XRP before. So every time something comes up, basically Sol gets mentioned, and it's a good thing, right? That's what you want to have. Chart also doesn't look that bad. If the monthly closes a new high here, the false breakout from last month kind of gets invalidated, and it just looks good. And I think it could easily rally a bunch, especially when, like I said, you have like that confluence with it just having the spotlight under Trump. I think that's quite important, just generally for coins, right? So one of the reasons why I like XRP, also American, quite American actually, and like you have that confluence of, okay, the chart looks good, but you also have like a narrative where people can bet on Trump just liking US coins more than anything else. So that's kind of like the case for Sol. That's why it's good. I don't really think there's too much TA to do. Like if you go on the weekly, there's just been like 3 closes at the same level, like at the all-time high close level. You have like the first one, which was the all-time high. Then you have the second one in November 2024, and now like last week, the third one. And at some point, you would expect that to break, right? Like the more times you test this level, the weaker it becomes.
Or it's an all-time high SFP. Thanks for
also possible.
Other side of the range is what? I mean, realistically, $8. There's untapped liquidity.
You can make that argument actually. Like it literally SFP'd and then closed at the resistance. Like that's a good argument.
I mean, the midpoint is what? Like let's split it even. Call it $50.
But I think it's a little bit stupid given the narrative that we have.
Sure.
But if you think the market, like what we talked about earlier, like we're not early. Like this is kind of like the president launching a meme coin is kind of like, I mean, cannot really. Yeah, it's kind of fucked. So you could say like, hey, make that argument. I just think it's not that good. I think there's a little bit more in the cycle left. And if you're fading this now and it goes to like 300, 350, and then comes back down and proves you right, which it easily can, right? Like false breakout above the high, spends like 3-4 weeks above 300 and then comes back down below where we are right now. Like that'd be hilariously bearish, right? But it doesn't really help you if you short it here, right? I don't think you have necessarily the best narrative plus the best chart to be bearish this thing, but I could be wrong.
That makes sense. Does this fall into the similar category of if you get like a weekly, because it's more or less the weekly I think is the best time frame / anchor for this. Although I just I don't love any of the levels within this, but it hasn't been a bad time frame, the weekly and the daily. Is this one of those where you, similar to ETH, if you breakout trade this and get invalidated, you shouldn't feel awful about it? Or is it not as good as ETH, given it we've only been here a couple times as opposed to like 4 times across, it's like 6 times in 4 years or some shit for ETH, whereas this is a bit newer. Is this still like a worthwhile breakout trade, or do you have some reservations?
This one is harder to do, I think like the ETH trade, like at 4K, that's so obvious. I think 4K to 5K is pretty much going to happen in one day. Like if ETH goes to 4K, it's going to go to 5K pretty much probably the next day, if not the same day. And then like that's a massive push. With Solana, it's a little bit of a different trade. I think there's the chance it just chops around and chops you out like 3 or 4 times on the breakout. I don't think that's
that, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's already, like you said, it's already been doing that. I think with ETH, it's hard to get to 4K, but then I think at that point it would really run. With Solana, it's been easy to get to where it is, but then I think like it's harder to make a breakout run at this point. But that doesn't mean it's more bearish. Like if anything, Solana has been quite a bit more bullish than ETH has been. I'm just saying like the breakout trade itself is like so much harder. Like the ETH breakout trade from 4K, I could see myself do. The Solana breakout trade, like there's 0 chance that I'm gonna do that. Just because I think like like 3 out of 4 times I would get chopped out of that trade.
Yeah, gotta love cases where even if you're right, you lose money because the way it goes. Also, do you remember AI agents? That was fun, right? Like, what the fuck
Oh
happened?
God, yeah. I mean, I don't want to. I haven't looked at the chart, so I literally haven't looked at the chart since they went up, and
Yeah.
now they're apparently back down. Give me good ticker that I can look
Oh,
at.
where should we go? Maybe AI 16Z.
Is it 17 or is it 16?
It's
It's
16.
16, yeah.
That's still up a shit ton in relative
Yeah.
terms.
Oof, though. Holy shit.
Recently, not so great. What about Zero
No.
Bro? What's that been doing?
Oh, that's zero since Binance, right?
Oh, okay. Zero Bro actually went to zero. What about Goat?
Yeah, Goat's also at
Goat
zero
went to
as far as I
zero.
know.
What's the fucking virtual? No, virtuals. God damn it! I'm forgetting all my fucking AI tickers. Didn't even bother adding it to my watch list.
Yeah, I mean, they're so we talked about this. They're so bullshit. Like, you were too lazy to add them. Obviously, a great narrative, right? Like, anyone that kind of took advantage of it, great.
Yeah.
But like anyone that actually fell for this, I'm sorry, you might be a little bit moronic. Like, no offense, but that's just so. Like, these were so stupid. Now, they are probably gonna come. Like, some of them, or like in other versions, are gonna come back. Like, I think the AI narrative is long. That's gonna take a long time to go to zero. I think that's gonna be a long lasting narrative. But obviously, these coins are just like, there's a bunch of grifters. Oftentimes, it's Indian dudes just responding to you, and with the automated ticker just to make sure, right? And even if they cannot do anything, like, it's just shit in my eyes. Like, they don't need the token.
Did you see the
And it's
tweet
why
from Shoku being like, crypto AI agents allowed me to do something in 30 minutes that used to take me 2 minutes or something to that effect?
yeah, and I don't even think they allow him to do it. Like, the crypto ones, they don't allow you to do anything.
Yeah, it's
Like, that's the thing. Like, I think there's a lot of grifting there.
of
But
course it's
it's
AI. Like think about how many
yeah,
course sellers there are in AI right now.
dude, there were a bunch of like the new influences that you have that are
Yes.
streaming, like live streaming and
Oh
shit,
yeah.
where they were like, yeah, the AI coins on Pump Fund, they're gonna get to ATI first, or whatever the fuck they were
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
I
I
was like,
saw that.
what
Holy
the
shit.
fuck? That is so stupid.
Yeah.
I think it's a great narrative. I think there is, like, you can trade this great, but like, all these things are just fucking shit. And I don't think there's going to be anything good coming around anytime soon. So I'd be careful with these. Now, then, like, I mean, I said this for a long time now. They're down like a shitload since the top. They were up before. So take it with a grain of salt. I mean, these coins are literally like down 60, 70, 80, 90%, with Bitcoin being pretty much at all-time high. To be fair, meme coins are also basically down that same amount. So just generally, like, everything's been struggling that has not been Bitcoin or Dino coins in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, people always love to point out examples in the sector to make an argument for relative strength. But like,
Yeah.
you need to rotate so fucking frequently in these new sectors. It's actually unreal, and they're so insidery as well. Like so many of these launches that like you can't reliably just stay long a sector. You can't, because even if the sector does well, but you don't rebalance within it to pick newer, shinier, more insider laden coins, then you're fucked. Basically, you could have been like a long AI, but if you're holding like, I don't know, virtuals or some shit relative to Goat, your portfolio looks completely different. So that's usually how that framing goes. And as far as memes themselves, I think a lot of them are still generally recovering from like the Trump launch effect, if that makes sense.
100%,
Like they
yes.
got fucking absolutely cratered, and people just went and just lost money on. Well, a lot of them made money, but then a lot of people who were late obviously lost money on Trump, and so there's nothing to there's nothing to rotate. You know, like the people who made money are sending it to USD and into US bank accounts, and the people who lost money you can't rotate with something you don't have anymore. So not great.
Yeah, the Trump launch, I think if there's one thing that it was bad for, I mean, there's a lot of things, but the worst one is basically just that it nuked all the on-chain meme stuff. And it makes sense too, right? Anyone that has like available money to kind of put into something that isn't necessarily just like Bitcoin, for example, have to get your wallet out. You have to do all that kind of shit if you don't hold it on the exchange, right? With like all of these on-chain shitters, I mean, you just have that in your Sol wallet, in your ETH wallet, in whatever wallet. and you can sell them and immediately send it to wherever you want to trade Trump. And you want to and that kind of is what happened, right? Anyone that had any available cash anywhere in the market, they just sold whatever they had and moved it into Trump. So I think that was one of the biggest liquidity sucks that we had in a long time. And the problem was that these sectors were already weak, right? Like the Memecoin sector was already really fucking weak. So you don't really have the liquidity to support a market like that when a bunch of people are just, they don't care about the execution. They don't care about the price that they get out of, because they're like, okay, I can make a 2, 3, 4x on Trump. And that's kind of what happened. Like literally like meme coins dumped like 10, 20, 30, 40%. Trump started going up, went all the way back down. But yeah, if he does it again, it's going to be funny to see what happens to the market. I think it's going to be, the more often they launch something, the less of an impact it's going to have. And I also think if Trump goes up, like the Trump coin itself, it's going to be having less and less of an impact on the rest of the market. But this first one was massive.
Yeah, I guess normalize presidential launches so we get used to it. Where do you even go from there? I don't know. Didn't Cuba rug a shitcoin?
They did, yeah. I don't know if it was a hack or not, but yeah, that was on Twitter.
And John McAfee came back. Did you see that as well?
Yeah, fucking. That's so.
What the fuck are we even talking about, dude? This is insane. Like,
yeah, it's just so disrespectful. Like, like just straight up, whoever's running that, if it's, as far as I understand, it's not hacked. Probably just like an ex-wife or /wife of his is running the account, which is completely fucked.
Yikes. I'm out of topics, Don. Yeah. Litecoin's up 4%. There's a topic for you.
Yeah, I mean, basically anything that is going to get an ETF or likely will get an ETF, I think is going to trade quite nicely. That's a good narrative to have. If coupled that with the Trump narrative of US coin, like there's a few, like Solana, it doesn't have an ETF, has the Trump narrative. That's why it's probably going to be a better bet than a lot of other things.
What about XRP? Does that still count?
Yeah, I mean, XRP, like, is going to probably get an ETF too. And then you have like US coin still. I mean, the XRP people have been in politics quite a while. And so they can kind of easily kind of insert themselves into these kind of discussions. So yeah, that's also part of it. But yeah, like there's a few, but you don't necessarily want to be in coins that don't have any of those. I think like liquidity is very thin, and there's not enough money to go around for all of the coins. So
yeah,
I think that's been the story of this entire cycle. There's not enough money to pump everything, just because we have, I mean, both of us haven't launched a single coin, but just the crypto space as a whole has launched too many. And I think it's never been more apparent as now, like with Pump Fun and with anything else. Like I would argue like 2021 was like 100 times more coins than we had in 2017, if not more. And I think now we have like 10,000 or 100,000 times more coins than we had than 2021. And at some point, who the fuck do you expect to pump all of this, right? Like you literally need the entire world to pile into crypto, and even then you couldn't pump all of these coins.
Yep. So that's the thing. Like we pay the price for that as traders, because I mean, arguably it's a more efficient market and it rewards you for picking correctly, and there's more dispersion or whatever else, even though in reality it's just easier to trade a correlated market where everything goes up. But another downside is that you can't even make, as mentioned earlier, like sectoral bets now, because even within a sector there are so many fucking coins, and whenever a sector becomes hot, people just want to grift it and extract, so they start launching new coins within that sector. Like nothing can actually take decent footing and stay relevant. Like we've mentioned this before, but I still think it's true. The sector to sector rotations are fucking rapid because people run out of money and move on to the next thing very quickly. But then within the sector, the coins that are, leading it also move absolutely quickly. So it's actually pretty fucking hard. I think there's like a takeaway point here that like part of the appeal of being a boomer and trading like BTC, for example, like you and I like to do, and maybe venturing outside to like ETH, Sol, etc., is that they'll never become like completely extinct and irrelevant from a trading perspective. Like certainly not
Yeah.
BTC. Like it's not going to rug or disappear, or if crypto goes up, you can be generally pretty sure that BTC is like doing well. And it sounds simple, but that's such a nice thing to not have to worry about. And you can just focus on the trading part and the directional part instead of I was right on this sector, but then the dev ended up being a scammer and it got CTO'd at 5 a.m, and now there's no liquidity and I'm down 80%. Like just not having to think about those things. It's actually quite nice from time to time.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think it's gonna get worse and worse until you get like a major wipe and like all of these coins. And I mean, I know that a lot of them are already down 90% or whatever, but basically you need these coins to die. And like, I don't think that's gonna necessarily happen during the bull market. It's gonna happen during the bear market and quite quickly. But it's a drag. It's a drag on everything. It's a drag on the best performing assets, right? And I mean, it's not necessarily always a bad drag, right? So for example, ETH would be up infinitely more if Sol never existed, right? Like, I think that's a pretty given. Solana has been kind of siphoning off a lot of liquidity that would have gone to ETH if Solana didn't exist. But I don't think you can make the argument that Solana therefore shouldn't exist, right? Because they do a lot of things right. But then you have coins like with the meme coin sector, for example, like these don't have a use, right? They're just there to speculate. So like whenever someone makes a new coin, they're taking liquidity away from another one, like from another coin. And I think at this point, like that's just that basically the entire sector is killing itself. Like it's cancer spreading. And I think that's kind of how you have to look at it. Like all the new launches that don't contribute anything is basically just cancer spreading in the system. And you kind of have to like almost like it's like chemotherapy, right? Like you have to kill the market to get rid of all of that. And I think I don't think it's going to happen during the bull market, but it basically paralyzes like entire sectors in the market. Like if the meme coins want to take off, right? Let's say Dogecoin wants to take off, and it's something that we've actually seen in the last couple of days. Dogecoin started pumping and then WIF started going up, right? And then you have like 5 other dog coins that start going up as well. All of that liquidity could have been to Doge, and you would have had a nice kind of like a big move on the upside. But instead, you got a piss poor move, and it was a piss poor move on not only Doge but on all the other ones as well, because basically like they're parasitic and they're sucking off the liquidity of the leader. And that's kind of like the state we are in now as a market, where where stuff pumps much less just because there's too much of it. And that's gonna continue being a story. Therefore, you have to pick the coins and the narratives that are not easily picked off, right? That's why Bitcoin has performed so well, because you cannot make the Bitcoin argument with any other coin. The Bitcoin argument is like very, very easily made. Just like, okay, Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's like the first one. It's accepted by, like, you have Michael Saylor in that camp. You have like Bitcoin has basically no real competitor. And therefore, like the liquidity drain is much less than, for example, for a meme coin. And then you have like Solana, ETH, and there's like a couple more, and they're kind of battling for themselves, and this is not going to go to zero, like you said, or not anytime soon anyway. And then the further down you go, the like in quality, the harder the battles become, and then the easier it is that shit thing is just not going to perform, just because you can just pick wrong.
Yeah, and the barrier to entry to making quote unquote a competitor is basically zero,
Yeah. It's the same with the AI coins.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like fucking GPT wrapper going band for band.
Yeah.
Oh man. So the summary of all you said there is believe in something, correct?
I mean,
Always
believe in
hold,
something that
never
actually
sell.
no, believe in something that actually makes sense. Which honestly, like, I mean, there's one coin that fits that bill, and it's Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
And we had this argument last cycle. I had so many fights with people on Twitter when I said it's Bitcoin and there's altcoins, and people are like, no, it's Bitcoin plus ETH and then there's altcoins. I'm like, dude, ETH is an altcoin, right? If I made that argument now and I was like, there's Bitcoin and there's ETH and there's altcoins, people would fucking laugh me out the door, right? They'd be like, you're such an idiot. If anything, it's Bitcoin plus Sol and then there's altcoins or whatever. and people don't learn, right? It's Bitcoin and there's altcoins. Just stop it. Like there's just get some help. There's one long-term asset in this space right now, and that's Bitcoin.
BNB. Oh yeah, sorry.
Hex. But yeah, so just be sure that you don't really fall into the trap of kind of thinking your coin is more than it actually is, because everything's replaceable. You just need to fork the coin, have enough money to give incentives for people to use your fork, and then enough money to pay a couple devs and easily kind of overtake the original if you pay enough out. Like we've seen this a million times, right? Where like new coin comes around, it has a lot of money, can pay people incentives to use the coin, and suddenly like, oh, this coin has so much usage, and then your ETH is suddenly overtaken by Sol, and then your Sol is suddenly overtaken by something new, and then like you can go down that list very, very fast. So like you need to be like, it's an old sector now, and we're not early, but it's still a young sector in a way, right? Where you can just replace all of this shit. I think literally every single coin can be replaced besides Bitcoin, and no one would bat an eye. Like you can just put another coin there, wouldn't make a difference at all.
So there is no second best.
I mean, there is no second best, literally. Yeah. I mean, he's crazy, and he's kind of like, I mean, Saylor's kind of, to me, crazy person that's lost his mind completely, but he's not wrong on that one.
There you go. Viggo managed to pull a Saylor endorsement out of Don. It's a great way to wrap it up. Yeah. Any final comments, questions, notes, concerns, or revelations that have happened during the course of this episode?
Nah, all good.
Neither. Fantastic. Hope this was enjoyable. If there's listening, leave a like before you click off. Thank you to for supporting the show as always. Hope you'll have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.